Hello, this is Mr. Eason with Homework Help. This is the first in a series of videos on adding and subtracting fractions. Throughout the month of September, we have been looking at calendar pages that have different money expressions written on them, adding money, and we've been converting those money equations and expressions into fraction and decimal expressions. And so we've been turning, a $half plus a half dollar into 1/2 plus 1/2, or 3 dimes plus 3 dimes into 3/10 plus 3/10. And so we're going to use that information that we've been practicing to start adding and subtracting fractions that don't have the same denominator, and we'll be thinking of them as money to help us do that. So this screen right here will be helpful for your child as they go through this in case they don't know how much each coin is worth by now. In the next couple of slides, we're going to solve some addition expressions with fractions that don't have the same denominator, and we're going to use money to help us out there. So, here is an example of the way we're using money to add fractions. So if we are trying to add the fractions 1/4 plus 1/2, we can think of this as being a fourth of a dollar plus a half a dollar. So a fourth of a dollar we know is a quarter, and a half a dollar we know is a $half piece, or 50 cents. So one way we can think about this is to think about adding 0.50 plus 0.25. And when we add those two decimals up, or money amounts up, we get 0.75, or 75 cents. So then students can think about 75 cents as what fraction of a dollar. Another way that students can think about this is they can think about these in terms of fractions. Okay, so that half dollar, or the 50 cents piece, is like 50 out of 100. We're going to add that quarter, which is 25 out of 100. And that's going to get us 75 hundredths. Okay, and 75 hundredths would simplify to something as well. The other thing that you can think about is you could think about the half dollar piece being split up into 2 quarters. And so I'll do that with a marker here. Try to get a thicker one so I can really show that off. We could think about it like this, and we've got quarter pieces, right? And we have 3 quarter pieces here. We've got 1, 2, 3, and so that's 3 out of 4 quarter pieces. So 1/4 plus 1/2 is 3/4. Now, I know that there are other ways to do this. There are simpler ways to do this, but being able to make that connection of money to fractions is vital for students to help understand how fractions work and how money works, and so we are going to try our best to keep away from adding fractions in any other way for now. And I promise that in future homeworks we will learn how to add fractions in a different way besides money. So let's look at one more example on the next slide. So now we're going to look at an example of 1/4 plus 1/10. And so we are thinking about 1/4 as being a quarter. We're thinking about 1/10 being a dime. So we're really trying to add 1 quarter and 1 dime together. And so I'm going to show you a picture of that, and then we're going to look at the fraction and decimals that represent 1/4 plus 1/10. So here's our picture. We've got our quarter and our dime. And the problem is the picture doesn't really help us do anything. So let me go ahead and put up our decimal and our fraction, then we'll talk about how we can change our picture, help us think about this a little bit differently. So 1/4 would be 0.25 plus 1/10 would be 0.10, because again 1/4 is a quarter, 1/10 is a dime. That's going to equal 0.35. And we could also think about this as a fraction of 25 hundredths plus 10 hundredths, which would be the same thing as 35 hundredths. Okay, so now let's look at a way we can use our picture to help us maybe find a better fraction, maybe a simplified version of this fraction. And it's going to involve us thinking about these coins not as quarters and dimes, but as nickels. So I'm going to put a small video up here so we can kind of watch that. So right now I went ahead and traded out my dime for 2 nickels. So now at least they look like they're the same amounts. We have 2 nickels and a quarter. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take off this quarter and turn that into nickels as well. So now we've got 7 nickels. And if you have 7 nickels, the fraction of a dollar that would be 7/20 because there are 20 nickels in a dollar and we have 7 of them. So, as you can see here, we could also simplify this fraction instead of 35 hundredths into 7 twentieths. So anyway, this has been Mr. Easton with Homework Help. Remember to try your best to use the money equivalents instead of just trying to do something else. As stated previously, we will do other ways besides adding them with money, but this is really important to make sure they're making the connection between money and decimals and fractions and how they all kind of intertwine together. This has been Mr. Easton with Homework Help. Thanks, and I'll see you in class tomorrow.